Hi everyone, it's Margaret with Creative Stamping with Margaret. I'm here with one of the projects from the June 2023 monthly card class, which features the Circle Sayings bundle, and that bundle includes the Circle Saying stamp set as well as the 2 3/8 inch circle punch. For the particular project we're doing today, we will not be using that punch. We'll be using it on other cards from the class, but instead we're going to be using the 2 1/4 inch circle punch, which it's great for layering these two circles together, as you'll see again on a future project in this class. But for this class, we're doing a Celebrate card. I'm calling it the Celebrate Circle Sayings card. And as you see, it has this cute little cupcake. All of the stamps used on this card do come from the Circle Sayings. I did not even put a panel on the inside of this card, but I have left it blank because you can use the Celebrate for a variety of occasions. So look through your stamps and pick a great sentiment to use on the inside when you're ready. And we're also featuring one of the new in colors, which is the Wild Wheat. I believe that's what it's called. For some reason I want to call it Winter Wheat, but we're using the Wild Wheat Cardstock. So if you ordered a kit to go from me, you will have received your card base, which is the Wild Wheat, 2 of the basic white panels, cardstock panels, and then a circle. I've already punched the circle using the 2 1/4 inch punch, and just as a note, usually I like to stamp then punch. I found for this particular set with these circles, it's much easier to stamp, to cut then stamp. That's just an FYI to you. And then of course there's a little white cardstock piece for your cupcake, which you will fussy cut that. And then there is another panel of the Wild Wheat cardstock that we're going to use, which has been texture embossed with that dotted embossing folder. That embossing folder is one of the folders from the Basics 3D embossing folder set. There are 3 folders in that set. We have the one that we've used here, which is the dotted. There's also one that I call sort of a hash mark, which is a great background stamp, which we've used previously on some other projects. And then there's one that looks like it could be a flower, it could be starfish. We're actually using it on another card. So those are online exclusive only products. So I encourage you to look at those because there's such a variety in that pack of 3 that you'll get lots of use out of them. And then other materials that you're going to need for the card, you will need the Memento black ink. You're also going to need the Wild Wheat ink pad. Let me grab mine quickly. Sorry about that. Usually I have things right at hand, and I had used that on another project and forgot to bring it with me. But there again, as I said, the 2 ink pads are the Memento Black and the Wild Wheat. And then you're also going to need your stamping blends, the Wild Wheat, and I'm using Crumb Cake. And then I always keep the little color lifter handy because that's my eraser if I go outside the lines coloring. And then you will need the in color dots that coordinate the Wild Wheat. And then I've also am using the Wild Wheat ribbon. That's called the textured ribbon, and you'll need 2 pieces, one to go around and then one to tie the little knot, which I call the faux bow. So let's get started. So let's go ahead and fold our card base, burnish that well with your bone folder. And you can add your white layer. Oops. Before we add the white layer though, if you notice, I've wrapped that ribbon around. We want to add our texture embossed panel, and to save time, I did texture emboss one ahead of the class before I did this video. So let's go ahead and attach that, and because this is heavily embossed, I recommend that you use a very strong adhesive. Now you could use the embossed side or the debossed side, whichever you prefer. So let's add our adhesive on here. And for the longest time I did not care for the green glue, the Tombow, but now it's become one of my favorite glues because it gives me that little bit of extra time to move things and make sure I get them placed in place correctly. And I think the issue I had when I first started using the glue was using too much, and then I would get it everywhere. So now is when we want to add our ribbon across, and you'll just wrap that around the front. You don't even need to adhere it on the front. And then I'm going to add a little of the liquid glue to hold it in place. You could use a glue dot or a glue strip here, whichever you prefer. But since I have this handy, I'm just going to use this. And I am going to put a glue dot on this one. Let's see if I can find where I had it right in front of me, just to hold that in place until that glue sets and dries. Because of course we'll be gluing this to our card, so the adhesive using to glue that will also hold that down in place. So now we can add this to our card base. So let's place that down, center that. And I'm going to hold off adding my little bow until I finish the circle that we're using. So now and this of course is for the interior of the card, and I'm not going to put that in there because I'm not sure what I'll be using that card for. It could be a birthday, it could be a graduation. There's just a number of things that we could use it for. So now I'm going to pull in my Wild Wheat ink, classic stamping pad, and I'm going to ink up the Celebrate stamp. And I'm going to try to center that inside that circle. See, that turned out great. So we'll set that aside so I don't get the ink all over my hand. Now we'll pull in our little square of basic white, use your cupcake stamp, and then our memento ink, which is great to use with the stamping blends. Of course, you could also use a gray or another color that you wanted. You could even use that Wild Wheat because those work well with the water-based. The blends work well with any water-based stamp ink. So now to color. So I've colored, if you'll notice here, I have colored the base of the cupcake liner, using the crumb cake. And I'm starting with the light, and I'm just going in and coloring this. So we just color this. Then to add a little bit of contrast, I'm going to come back in with the dark. If you look at cupcakes a lot of time in the liner, you will see where it's a little bit darker sometimes in some areas than other. And I'm just taking and swiping over some of these lines that are already on the stamp, that have already been stamped, and that just brings that little bit of shading to that. See how simple that is? Now let's pull in our wild wheat, and there again I'm starting with the light wild wheat, and I'm just going to go through here, and I'm not going all the way to the edge of the lines on the side because I'm trying to prevent the bleed that you get. This is an alcohol ink, and it continues to move after you put the ink on the paper, so that's why it's recommended that you sort of just barely go up, because it's going to continue to fill in. And then you can always go back and touch it up if you see areas. And then just like I did with the cupcake liner, I'm pulling the dark in, and I'm going to use the nib end here. And here where it would be a little bit darker, around the liner edge, just touch that up. And then where we have these little black lines where the frosting would be just a little bit heavier, I add that. And then I'm going to blend that a little bit more by going back with the light again. And as it dries, it will look nice. You could just leave it all light. The way this is designed, you really don't even need to do the shading. But I see a spot I missed with the crumb cake right along the side here, so I'm going to take the nib and touch that. So now you just need to get your paper snips, and let's trim this little cupcake out. This is a great little cupcake. I'll be using it on a lot of different cards because it's so easy to fussy cut. And even if I decided I didn't want to fussy cut it, but just use it on little birthday cards, different birthday cards, and other little celebrations. It would be cute for a baby shower to do little tags and color it like a baby reveal even. A lot of different options. And of course, if you have one of those electronic die cutting machines such as a Scan and Cut, this is a great one to scan. You just have to make sure you fill in those little gaps. So now that we have this completed, we can finish off our card front. And I've used Stampin' Dimensionals to attach the cupcake to our stamped circle. So let's place these down. We'll just add that to the center. And notice how I rotated that? I wanted to have a celebrate so that it's up at the top and not reading it sideways. So just sort of be aware of that. And I also added it to the card front with dimensionals. And I put an extra one in the middle since it's going to use it to help hold that ribbon. So we'll pull our card back. So now we have that adhered. The last steps are to slide this other piece of ribbon which is about a 4-inch piece of ribbon, 3.5 to 4 inch, and we're just going to tie a little knot to angle that off. And I'm going to pull in my ribbon scissors and just trim that off a little. Now, if you find that your ribbon tends to be fraying a lot, because this particular ribbon does, you can just take a little bit of the glue, the green glue, and just barely touch the end of it across here and dab it. Excuse me for that. I'm losing my voice here. But just touch the ribbon to the glue to the end of the ribbon and let that dry, and that'll help hold those little pieces in place. And then to finish off our card, we want to bring in the in color glue dots. These are not glue dots, but dots, and we're using the wild wheat. And I'm placing those right over the dots. So there. And I apologize for my voice and having to clear my throat. We've had so much rain the last week or two, and that just throws my allergies back into action. Well, so excuse me for that, but back to our finished card. Now we have completed our card. Thanks for joining me. This is the Celebrate Circle Saying card, and this, if you ordered the kit to go, you will have received all the materials to replicate this card. You just need to make sure that you have the stamp set and the punch. It's a bundle that you can get. Plus, for this particular card, you will need your 2.25 inch circle punch, and I'll have these items listed in the description with the video so that you will know what supplies you need. So thanks for joining me. Have a great rest of your day.